So we're going to move on to partials, inertial work. Remember we talked about with partials and isometrics with increase in the deficit that we wanted to be at that length, right? We wanted to be at that end range. Well, we can look at that from a opening or closed angle. Well, now we're looking at getting closer to that proximal or that closing angle, right? So now we're looking at decreasing that deficit. So we want to now create more longitudinal hypertrophy proximal to the body, right? And this is going to parlay into, do I have enough contractile units from this weak position of in a shortened position to overcome inertia, to create force from various positions, right? And we should be focusing on full range of motion the majority of our training time, right? So as I look through progressing into a program like decreasing the deficit or increasing the deficit, the foundation is, do I have good movement, right? Can I move through a full range of motion under control without compensation or kind of just things that we don't want, right? We don't want to try to find a mechanically advantaged position when we're trying to intentionally create mechanical disadvantage, right? And that's the thing that we're trying to transfer over to sport. Can they get that range and can we add the load is a foundational piece. So at this point, where I'm trying to decrease the deficit, and I'm looking at partials, and I'm looking at getting to a shortened position where I'm trying to overcome, I want to think about now that shortened range, or a partial range, or a quarter squat range, as opposed to that quarter length range that we did for increase in the deficit. This would be an example of trying to focus on improving that non-counter movement jump, right? So we're going to go down, pause for 3, 2, 1, drive out, right? This is that look, feel, and smell type of thing. Right? And we want to be strategic about it. We want to be strategic about what I'm doing going into testing and see what has a direct impact. Right? We know we want to increase or decrease the deficit. In this case, we're trying to decrease the deficit to improve non-counter movement jump, relatively speaking, to counter movement jump. Why not load the deck a little bit? So I'm going to do an inertial squat from a quarter squat position. And remember, quarter squat, half squat, full squat. This is the quarter. And we did all these different pauses from an overcoming perspective. So we built into this position, right? What I showed for an example for a deadlift overcoming iso 3 position, we could easily do with the back squat or front squat. So as we're thinking about this, I can really load this up and transfer over into that non-counter movement, right? So setup-wise, create tension. And one thing to think about too is easily we can substitute a front squat position. We can easily substitute a safety bar, another bar that we like to use. All fine, relatively speaking. From here, I drive up, trying to explode through. And we'll talk about accommodating resistance as well. So this might be a good way to add into that concentric emphasis. Really try to accelerate because that bar will jump, especially if we have a sub-maximal weight on here. And it goes into, this is a partial range. So it should be greater load than what I do in terms of full squat. So a lot of ways that could be considered super maximal, right? So if I can normally back squat 100 kilos going full range, maybe I can do 110, maybe I can do 115. That is what we're thinking about. We're trying to manipulate these angles and positions to try to get more concentric emphasis, try to get more load overcoming. So a good rep range, I like to do a little bit more because it's such a fast acting one. And we want to explode. And if we're going to use bar speed, we might be looking for this like starting strength range or as opposed to this like absolute strength, right? So we might get up to 0.5 to 0.75. We might look at speed strength, 0.75 to 1. We might look at like a more power, right? Above 1. Can you explode through and get some accommodating resistance like bands and chains to really drive through? And that's the key here. It's really trying to look at, let's put some constraints and some stipulations on the environment so they know what the objective is. Not just getting heavy to get heavy and get ugly, right? Can I accelerate? Can I drive through? Can I maintain my position? Does it turn into this Quasimodo type of back position? No longer good. We're not getting what we want. That's not going to transfer to what we're trying to get on the field. It's not going to transfer where we want to be when we non-counter movement jump. So if it doesn't look, feel, and smell and represent what we want to do from a training perspective, it's not good. And I like to use accommodating resistance and bar speed to really accentuate what we're trying to accomplish. We're coming from a static position. We're trying to overcome inertia, drive up as hard as we can, accelerate as hard as we can, just like we would coming off the line of scrimmage, where I'm drive blocking and I want to really lock them out. That is the key here. And the same token too when I'm doing any movement. is I want to put these constraints on the environment where they know the intent and they're forced to really do what was actually an intended aspect of that movement. So that is inertial squatting. You can do that with bench press. You can do that with a rack pull or deadlift type position. Whatever it is that you feel is going to be representative of decreasing deficit and getting us net closer.